Dungeon Brew.
Hey everybody, it is launch day here for Dheghom for Dungeon Brew. We're very excited to be launching this project, and today we're going to talk a little bit about the sample PDF that we are offering in lieu of the larger product that we're going to be delivering to all of you. So John and I have come together to kind of break down the sample project, what's in it, and what to expect in the larger product. And we're going to start, John, if you don't mind, talking about the Grimdark setting. I know we've got videos where we've discussed Grimdark before, what that means to us, what it looks like. But in regards to Dheghom, what does Grimdark look like?
So Grimdark is really just a way to kind of root things in kind of like the pessimistic reality. Like that's generally the way that I think of it. We're talking about the darker aspects of humanity and the darker aspects of morality, and pretty much the entire system is geared around that. So many of the quests and ideas for quests are focused on those types of things. And so the degree to which that appears, within your game for this setting is really up to the GM and the players there. And there's definitely some advice and some information in the document about how do you approach Grimdark, how do you make sure that everybody understands the themes and some of the topics that are going to be dealt with, just so that everybody's on the same page before you really dive into it.
A lot of this manual, for people that are wanting to pick it up and utilize it in their campaign, is it safe to say that they are essentially getting a guide to leading their players through a realistic hell in a goddamn, let me try that again. Is it realistic to say that people are picking up a manual that is leading people into this hell in the waking world?
More or less, yeah. I mean, everybody's hell is a little bit different, but there are definitely some aspects of this to where some people might be triggered by some of the themes that are actually occurring within it. And so, like I said, it's important that that conversation is had. But it's definitely kind of a pick and choose type situation where those things are offered for examples of what Grimdark could potentially be, but whether or not you include that specifically in your game is up to you.
All right, excellent. So I know that as folks are scrolling through this PDF and they're looking at the content, one of the first major sections they get into is the gods. And of course, this is a closed system that you created where the gods kind of hold this very important role within the creation of the world and why the world is the way that it is. What are they going to see when they step into this section? And what should they expect in future in the larger edition?
So in terms of the gods are physical beings in a physical world that have physical locations. And I think that this is something that sometimes is difficult for people to wrap their heads around, just the idea that, the giant boar in the forest is a god, the giant panther in the trees is a god, the dragon is a god. Generally speaking, these are the core of the pantheons that exist, and the world is designed with the idea that there are hundreds of these that exist throughout the known world, and what you're going to find in the manual are a sampling of some of the gods that exist. So most of the time, any given region has somewhere between 3 and 6 gods that have been identified, with instructions and information for the GM to kind of take that and run with it to either build their own gods or flesh out gods that are simply given some information about them. Generally, the deities fall into 2 categories, either uncorrupted, which are just the normal deities that exist in the day-to-day world, and then the Tatarigami. And the Tatarigami are corrupted gods. Generally speaking, these are some of the apex threats that exist within the world. Generally, CR 15 to CR 30 monsters that potentially can become a major challenge for a party of an appropriate level.
Yeah, I love that because I know some of our best campaigns have literally been the party going off to go kill gods. And so this gives a lot of flavor to do that. And you have a chart that's built within there to allow them to just really flesh out their own stat blocks for gods if we don't provide them in the book specifically.
Correct, yeah, and some of them, there's different degrees of this. There's some that's just saying, hey, this is an example of what, one of these Tatarigami might look like in terms of what do they look like, what is the inciting incident that made them corrupted, what are the motivations of that Tatarigami, like what do they want, and then there's other instances where we actually go on to build the full stat block so that you can see exactly how that manifests as a monster.
Well, I know we're talking kind of fast, but there's so much content that's going to be in here. I mean, we know that the main book is going to be like 300 pages long, and this is just a sampling of about 26 pages of content that we're going to be offering. But the next section they're going to find in this book is regarding magic. And you and our team have done an amazing job of kind of looking at magic through a new lens to make it a little bit more challenging, while also making sure that it aligns with 5e plus material so that people can incorporate this and utilize this. So what are they going to find here? How does magic work in Dheghom? And what is the spells going to look like in terms of what they're going to see in the larger manual?
So, in terms of magic, magic has a specific idea associated with it within Dheghom, which is called etheric saturation. And basically what etheric saturation is the idea that there is a buildup of magic within the world, almost like nuclear fallout or pollution or something along those lines, where it starts to cause problems with reality. Like you said earlier, Dheghom is a closed system, and some of the events within the lore have caused that system to start to deteriorate. And the result of that is there are breaches that are occurring that are pulling entities from the outside world into Dheghom, and this is just one of those chaotic elements that are coming along. So this can be as simple as some corruption of the magic within the area causes the dead within the nearby graveyard to rise, all the way up through having a planar breach that pulls in entities from the abyss or the nine hells. It really is, again, one of those things where it's giving the GM the tools in order to incorporate those things into the world as a narrative device in order to help provide interest for your players in gameplay. In terms of spells, we do have a few spells that are in there. These, again, are kind of focused towards the grimdark themes that are associated with Dheghom in general. There hasn't been a huge focus on the specific spells that are going to be incorporated, but when there are thematically appropriate spells that we feel like have a place, then we include those in the manual.
All right, awesome. So I know the next thing is, and we've touched on this in previous videos that we've done on Dheghom, this is going to be, of course, also a steampunk setting, which means that there are a variety of different weapons and some technology that is going to be in existence.
Right.
That is maybe not going to fit in every D&D setting, but it definitely fits here. I have seen you and the team working and through playtest working on the different guns and gear that people are going to find. Can you let them know what they're going to see in the sample and what might be in the larger book?
So the sample primarily focuses on the guns, and there is a system in place for handling things like misfire when it comes to weapons. We played along with the idea that weapons have basically this inherent flawed fallibility that occurs every time a weapon is fired, but there are improved versions of these. So you go all the way from this kind of industrial grade weapon where it's very crude and there's a very high chance of it misfiring, all the way up through master grade weapons, and those master grade weapons are the ones that are generally reliable unless you're taxing the system of the weapon itself. And what I mean by that is something like trying to fire multiple barrels at once or something like that, which can increase your chance of misfiring the weapon. So that's primarily what you're going to see within the sample text. When we get into the manual itself, we're expanding this into other areas, such as alchemical concoctions, which are more mundane versions of some of the potions you would associate with D&D, and they come with both pros and cons. There's usually some kind of detraction to taking it, but it is a common alchemical concoction. And then in addition to that, there are the steam broiler backpacks, and these are things where you're getting into the kind of magical type steampunk weapons. Not to say that they are magical, but they're existing on that level, just in terms of having something that is a rare or a very rare item that's attached to a steampunk backpack that allows you to use something like a pneumatic drill in order to be able to use that as a weapon.
Very cool. The next section that folks are going to find is probably my most the section that excites me the most, because people have seen me do multiple videos on world building and kind of storytelling and how these things come together. And you have done extensive work in building some factions in this world. You give some examples of it here in this particular sample, but it's much larger than this. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the sample does list all of the factions that will appear in the final manual. There are 8 of these, and these are considered the major factions, and of course the GM is more than welcome to build other factions that exist within the world, but these are the 8 major factions that are generally supported within the world itself. So the one that's actually detailed within the manual is for Navtog. So each one of the 8 factions has similar detail, and in fact, this is even an abridged version of all the details that are going along with the factions. But for Navtog itself, it's supposed to be this maritime trade empire where they do things like have debt trap colonization, which is basically they go in and they force this community into acquiring debt, and then once that community has acquired debt, then Navtog starts to pressure them to give them more and more and more, and that may be something along the lines of instituting press gangs in order to pull people in for slavery or for slave soldiers or something else like that. In addition to that, along with the factions, there is a detailed set of instructions for how to handle reputation among factions, and just kind of building up that aspect of gameplay so that your players can actually get affiliated with factions and then gain benefits based on their reputation.
I know many of these, are worldwide, but they're also based within certain regions, which you kind of have information broken down by regions too and what to expect. And not only do we have city guides out of the gate, but there's also going to be some stretch goals that provide additional city guides. What should folks expect out of those?
So I think you're dealing with two different things here. So one of the things that we have as a stretch goal are city guides, and some of the cities we were looking at doing are Belgrade, Ibanor, and then Khazar Karath. And those 3 cities are 3 of the more technologically advanced cities that are good locations for a lot of adventures to take place, just because there's a lot of conflict and there's a lot of interaction between different factions and different cultures in those places, which provide hotbeds for adventures, if that's the type of thing that you're looking for. So those are stretch goals that we're looking at, if we can get to certain points, just because they do require us adding in things like artwork and additional time with editing and writing the material. When it comes to what's actually in the manual itself, there is a breakdown of each of the 20 nations that exist within the world, and the example that's provided in the sample PDF is for Steinland, which is the home of the Zwerge, and they're kind of these necromantic dwarves who go around and raise the dead. And the dwarves have been reimagined in the world as the Thaylen species, just to kind of separate this and give them a little bit more of a distinct flavor that isn't quite so high fantasy. And you'll notice that in general, most of the other species that exist within the world kind of fall into that same type of grouping, where they have their own unique species that has been reimagined for this type of world.
So with 20 different nations, what are we looking in regards to like species and cultures and subclasses? I mean, there's some options I think that are kind of here in this sample, but I imagine it's going to be much larger in the book.
Right, so there are a total of 5 species, 19 lineages across those species, and then 20 nations across those lineages. So it's fairly extensive in terms of options. This is taking some of the, again, core style fantasy races and reimagining them. So you have the ability to play Cyclops, Fomorians, ogres, that type of thing, play Oni. And then there's also some fantastical creatures or mythological creatures that have been put into this as well, such as the Tengu, which are a Japanese-inspired spirit, and then some of the other, differently changed things. So we have like the Powery, existing as a Thaylen race or a Dwarven-style race. So many of these have been put back into the world in a way that just kind of puts a twist on the expectations and the tropes associated with most of these species and lineages.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense. But I know in addition to like creating this and trying to give a new flavor, you've also been doing some work with the development team to make sure that there are subclasses that align with, typical classes within 5e and can allow this to be balanced in that way as well. So can you talk about, I guess, not only how you guys have done that, but through playtesting, but also what subclasses are we looking at?
So part of what happens when it comes to subclasses is I notice that a lot of manuals will have a ton of subclasses in there, and part of what we're trying to do is make sure that subclasses that are being added to the manual are not only thematic to the world, they make sense that there is a place and a reason for the subclass to exist, but also that they're well balanced. We don't want to put anything in there that hasn't been properly play tested. So in lieu of having a lot of these, we're just trying to make sure that the ones that are in there make sense. So the one in the example document is the Corruption Domain Cleric. So this is one that is a cleric that's basically associated with Tatarigami, or the idea of the Corrupted Divine. So that there's a place for that one. One of the other ones that we're looking at is the Demolitionist Rogue, and this is, again, a stretch goal, mostly, again, because there's artwork and other information that has to go along with some of these being added into the manual. But the Demolition Rogue, I think, is a really interesting one. It's the idea of being able to use bombs and things like that in combat. We've play tested with that, and that is definitely a team favorite. It's one of the ones that people seem to enjoy a lot, just being able to be a rogue and toss bombs into the middle of combat. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that sounds like a good time. All right, the last section folks are going to find in here is Beasts and Brethren, which is, of course, talking about the Bestiary and what types of monsters can be added. This, again, is probably one of my personal favorites because I love having new monsters to throw at players in games if they just don't know what the stat blocks are or what to expect. These are, of course, probably very specific to this world, too, and built with this world in mind. Tell us a little bit about what people should expect and what are we looking at in terms of like numbers?
Sure. So currently we have several dozen monsters completed that we're interested in including in the manual, and the team is constantly coming up with new ideas. So it's entirely possible that by the time we get to publication, this is extended. But we have a pretty good span here, all the way from low CR monsters and the CR1 to CR4 range, all the way up through CR20 plus monsters. And one of the examples that is in the manual or in the sample is the Gauss-Spot Echo. This is one of the elite versions of one of the Tatarigami spawn, and then the Tatarigami themselves will also be statted out within the system, and these ones generally are CR15 to CR30, with the most common range for most of the Tatarigami being somewhere between CR20 and CR25.
Very cool. All right, well, I don't know that I have any other questions for you. I'm very excited that we are launching this today after so much hard work from our team on the other side with Dungeon Brew. I hope that people will follow the link, go check it out, follow it. There is an exclusive adventure that is included if you back within the first 48 hours. And if you have followed this, then there's also, of course, going to be that $5 credit that can be applied towards shipping or getting a $5 add-on. So both of those are very exciting for folks that have been following us for a while and been included in this process as we've been talking about this project. Anything else that you want to add, John?
I don't think so. I'm really excited to see this, put in front of people. I'm excited to see responses, and I can't wait to get to work on it.
All right. Well, you guys make sure you talk to us through the community tab, through YouTube, through our Patreon, whatever means is best for you to ask us additional questions. Join our Discord if you need to, if you're looking for additional commentary and feedback from John and I. And we will see you on the other side.
Dungeon Brew.